February 20th, 3 p.m. Members present, myself, Bob Shavit, Robbins, Nick Sinofsky, Bill Paul, C. Michael Johansson, applications for a seat tonight. Hearings, which brings us to new business. Item number 1, PZ-24-1, special permit renewal, section 15, excavation, sand and gravel, 180 Talon Turnpike. Let's see.
Some of the stuff up. You have
Yeah,
everything.
we
I can bring it up.
That particular question, we really concentrating on the south central part of the quarry. Last year, we took on about 100,000 yards.
Yeah. That's all. This is
So we're down here, we're down to the 640.
every once in a while we get someone who calls because they feel that it's, you know, too close to the property line and basically review the, you know, issues, things that at least I've heard with any traffic. 74 since the drive.
Yeah, we keep it pretty good.
We contract out with sweepers to come up this week for this. But yeah, ever since we paved the approach, about 800 feet of pavement. So that solves 99% of the problems that we're having with that, the traffic material. But every once in a while, you know, like just this past mud week we had 2 weeks ago, when everything started frosting out. Despite even that, stuff was tracking down the driveway out onto 74. So that's the case, we get a sweeper to do that. It's sort of situation normal. There's nothing that we really haven't. We just do the same thing every day.
All right, no complaints. So.
Yeah, you have the narrative in the actual application. I can pull it up here. This just kind of gives an overview.
Were you guys ever thinking about your reapplication software? Leaves a little something to be desired.
Really?
It's challenging. Let me put it this way: it's challenging every year. It's
Yeah, we don't do a lot of these application types, which is probably
it
why
shows.
the sand and gravel excavation renewal.
So, and we're not sure, I think, is one of the things is we never really know how much we owe.
Yeah,
So Diane wanted me to ask if you could check to see, she's not sure. I think she sent the check, but she's not sure if it was enough or not enough. No.
I went in and added all the application fees, and I think since then, that's when because it just charges the state fee. So, and part of that is because you can request a 1 year or more, or 2 year renewal, and that will.
Yeah, I
2 year.
don't think we can.
You can, it requires a public hearing. So there's the fee for that would change based upon which, so it should all be in there and correct, so,
Yeah,
I can check.
I don't think it is, but I don't know,
I will look and we can.
it's a little frustrating, it's a little bit of a frustrating process anyways.
Any questions from the commission on PZ 24-1? Seems like pretty straightforward at this one.
We don't feel any shaking anymore, John.
We had a pretty good one this year, one good one.
So you dynamite.
Yeah, we had one.
It's this summer, wasn't it?
What's that?
Was it this summer?
Well,
I don't know what I felt.
it was one that, it got all over Facebook apparently.
Yeah, that's when you see the ones when you have like a good, they lights up on the side.
If I was on Facebook, I probably would see it, but I'm not on Facebook, so, but I got a couple of calls, oh, did you guys just have a blast? Yeah, oh, it's all over Facebook, I said, okay. So,
Okay.
but we did have actually a couple people call, and we do, even for blast, though, we do have a call before we blast, list, so, and what I found over the 20 some odd years I've been doing it is if people are aware that there's gonna be a blast, it takes away some of the mistakes, so when they feel it, because you have times you'll feel it, especially if it's a cloudy day. Believe it or not, a cloudy days, you get the blast will reflect off the clouds. So you'll get sort of a secondary, some secondary vibrations. So on those days, you get some phone calls, but if there is anybody, just call the office, we'll put you on the list, and so we'll call people that want to be notified before we have a blast.
Approximately how often is there a blast on average?
Once a month, maybe. Sometimes if we're sort of developing an area, we might have one every couple of weeks, a small one every couple of weeks, but we try to do one about once a month, maybe once. So it's during the summer, maybe a little bit more than that, like once every 4 weeks, 3 weeks, but just depending upon how big the blast is and really how busy it is. So it'll be more if it's a busy time of year, blast a little bit more often. But I think the average has been like 13 blasts a year.
All right, PZ 24-2, special permit renewal, section 15. Excavation, sand and gravel at 171 Talon Turnpike, owner L. Becker.
And that's the one that's behind the office. That was a sand and gravel operation. We take very little gravel out of it now. Mostly this is reclamation. This year we brought in about 40,000 yards of fill for reclamation. Basically, we've taken millions and millions and millions of yards out of there since the early 50s. So we're kind of trying to bring it back to.
So it's pretty much spent as a.
Yeah, there's still more in there, not a lot. And we don't really focus on it,
Okay.
but it's, there is still more in there, but there's a lot of acreage over there that needs to be reclaimed, so we're bringing it to, and yeah, everything that we have that we bring in is tested, manifested.
Make sure it's not contaminated.
Yeah, we've got a Haley and Aldridge is our licensed environmental professionals. So on this particular piece of property, we have monitoring wells. We do bring fill in, so in case there's any issues, and those get measured quarterly, see if we have anything leaching. And it's yeah, but even anything that comes in has to be tested. We have a whole set of criteria for what we get tested for: VOCs, pesticides, PCBs.
Wasn't there some of the wells you were monitoring last year that were close or they were on the watch list?
No, it was the stormwater,
Okay.
on 180. There was, and I forgot what it was. There was something in there that was, you're right, Doug, I don't remember what it was now, but there was something in there that was a little bit elevated, but that was, yeah, that was across the street of the quarry. And that was stormwater outflow versus the monitoring wells. Those we haven't had a problem. I think that was, we installed them, I'm gonna say in 2021, the monitoring ones. So that's gonna be just a long-term project to bring it in.
Okay.
But like I said, everything, clean fill, regulated fill, it's all, every bit of it's tested and manifested. Just so we know that nobody's trying to pull a fast one.
That's prior to it comes on site, right? You do that?
Yeah. There may be a point where if we take, let's maybe set up some bins. Sometimes it's not practical for smaller jobs where you get some testing. So we're not doing that right now, but maybe, maybe in a couple of years, and we'll talk to, before we do it, we'll just set some bins up so people can bring in the material, and then like 500-yard bin, have it tested at that point. And if it meets our criteria, it could be offloaded, and if it's contaminated, it goes. It's just, because we do get some calls from people that are just, they're not looking to get rid of a lot of film, just some. And it's so that's something we're thinking of doing, so it's something. So I'm trying to think on there. Other than that, that's probably, from a mud point of view, that's probably our biggest, it's the most difficult, because obviously we're just putting fill down. So the trucks are, especially in the winter, when we have 2 or 3 mud seasons. I know it was really bad, the mud season was really bad. The towns were wiping us out of stone. They were just dumping 1.25 inch stone onto their dirt roads. Just coming out. Not too low.
All right, any questions on PZ 24-2?
Nope.
All right, PZ 24-3, special permit renewal, section 15, excavation, sand and gravel at 9 George Drive. Owner L. Becker.
Yeah, that's, if you're not familiar with that, that's down on Route 32, right behind Knight Construction.
Is that the one with the bands for where you can get like stone and everything?
That's night.
All that stuff.
Yeah, Knight's is in front of the railroad tracks. We're on the other side of the railroad tracks. It's right, it's between the railroad tracks and the Wilmette River. That's been there since the early 60s, and we actually don't do any graveling down there as far as digging. It's all processing. It's all bringing material in from the quarry. So they bring material in and process it. That's what we call a wash plant. So that there are some jobs that require washed, what they call washed to stone. Most of the guys around here are familiar with the 1.25 inch wash stone for septic systems. So that's strictly that plant is strictly just for producing wash stone, and also bedding sands, winter sand. By bedding sand, I mean stuff for pipes and utilities. So they'll put that above and below the pipe.
Any questions on that one?
I'm good.
Okay. Item 4, PZ 24-4, special permit renewal, section 15, excavation, sand and gravel at 328 Ruby Road. Owner Ruby Associates.
That one we haven't done. We haven't taken anything out of there for quite a while. We like to keep the permit active, only because we may do it at some point. But we haven't done anything with it for years now. That's this is the property that surrounds FedEx.
All right, I don't have any questions on that one. Does anyone else? All right, which brings us to unfinished business. Mike, can we take care of these tonight if we want to?
Yes.
Can we make a motion that'll encompass all of them in one motion?
Yep, just the only thing would be it would be for a year.
Okay,
So without the public hearing, the permit extension is a year.
okay,
I'll give it a try.
go ahead.
I move that PZ 24-1, PZ 24-2, PZ 24-3, and PZ 24-4, the special permit renewals for the sand and gravel operations be renewed for 1 year.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Congratulations, John.
It's a baby permit.
All right. That brings us to item G, approval of minutes from February 6th, 2024.
I think you have the January.
December 19th. So December,
Yeah, okay.
December 19th.
Okay, so we'll, let's do the minutes of,
Take
have
care.
a good night. Do the minutes of December 19th, 2023.
I move that we accept the minutes of December 19th, 2023 as presented.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, minutes are approved for December 19th, 2023. Any correspondence, Mike?
There is no correspondence.
All right, item I, public participation for items not listed on the agenda. We have no public in person. Anyone online have? See any hands up? All right, moving on to PA staff report discussion. Item 1, regulation amendments.
So I updated a memo that I had originally prepared and given to you guys. I believe it was back in the summer, it could have been actually around March, which outlined some potential regulation amendments that we should consider for various reasons and things that have come up over time. So it included the outdoor dining, minimum floor area for housing, home occupations, some of the review criteria based upon some legislative changes, accessory dwelling units, signage, strategic development zone, commercial lighting, and driveway standards. So these were all things that either had been put on your plate through applications, legislative changes, or things that we had talked about. And so I ticked off the two that we've finished with, which were outdoor dining, accessory dwelling units. Those changes we've made. We had an initial discussion about home occupations, but we never got to a point where we had a final regulation. We've had discussions about signage. Commercial lighting is something that's come up, and we've talked about how the commission has always sought the International Dark Sky Association compliance, but doesn't actually have that in their standards. And driveway standards are something that we have documentation that references driveway ordinances that have never been established. And one of the things that we have within our standards and zoning regulations are talk about the design of driveways, but we don't really get into some of the more public safety engineering things that a lot of towns have so that driveways that are longer, for example, have access for fire apparatus. We make sure they're wide enough so that a fire truck doesn't have to be bushwhacking through trees, and it can support the weight, et cetera. So we kind of had this list and had talked about it, and I thought, well, we had a little bit of a quiet moment. It might make sense to figure out if any of these are worth continuing to pursue, and if so, which ones piqued your interest.
I know we've talked about driveways before, long ones, that we have brought up turnarounds and so forth, like bypasses. And so maybe it needs, more official scrutiny, but
Seems
I
like
know
200
these things come
Seems
up.
like 200 feet's kind of, that's not that long though.
Not really.
To have a turnaround or something like that.
Especially on the grade too, if you got a driveway that's 200 feet, it's like.
You ever been on Nipmuc Road?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, I just wrote this in here as a discussion point, but this is so that if the driveway is in excess of 200 feet, it would be reviewed by the fire marshal. And then, I think Tolland is similar. It's 200 or 300 feet requires a bypass, 400 plus requires a 40-foot. It requires a design of the driveway so that you can do a 40-foot truck turn with it, like in a K-turn. So that if they get all the way down there, they don't have to back down.
That'd be fun backing out of that.
Yeah. And so it would be to establish some of those standards. If there's a longer driveway, we, as a matter of practice, refer to the fire marshal so that we can be sure that if there's ever an issue, they can get out there. But it's a little bit hard sometimes if we have major renovations or other things to just explain to people that this is what our expectations are, because we don't have anything in the regulations. We're not complicated, but something that's probably worth considering. Fire trucks have gotten a lot bigger, I would say.
Oh, yeah. Have you
So
seen Bertha?
I-
18113,
I have not, I don't know what the weight is, but
30, that was it, 36 feet long?
36 feet long.
I think it's got
And
it.
what's the weight?
Oh,
50,000 pounds?
more than that.
So
You have
like,
to have a license to drive an 80,000-pound truck. to drive it.
you will remember we did the special permit for the home/dental practice on 74 on the right-hand side going up the hill. So like that one has a really long driveway. It's got two, because they have the lower level where the practice is and then the upper level where the home is. So there's, some fair room there for some turning, but there's a point where there's a pipe that goes under the driveway. So it's a really long driveway. It's got an upgrade and it's got a side slope. So we made sure that Trevor went out to look at that and the builder was available so that we were comfortable that the truck wouldn't crush the pipe and be stuck. But that was just, because we coordinated that. So those situations, particularly because the public goes to that property, we want to make sure that they can get it, up and down.
We still have in the regulations the apron, the end where it comes into the road. One point it had to be a certain width and everything.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
houses and stuff.
for those, we didn't have any involvement because it was a state road, so they don't even really check. But yeah, we would require a minimum, I forget how wide it is, but at least within the right of way for the apron to be paved. A lot of towns will say if it's the minimum if it's 10% grade, between 10 and 15% grade, it needs to be paved. Max grade is 15%, so that you don't go up a dirt track and have a lot of those issues. So those are other things that we don't necessarily have. So it's something that we could look at. The only other one that we kind of put any significant time into was the home occupations.
That one should probably get over the finish line.
Yeah.
I think so.
We've talked about, there's several frustration points with that. Number one, there really is no defined ceiling. So when something is no longer a home occupation is kind of an issue.
Well, we dealt with that whole thing right here. with
Yep.
septic.
So that's created a couple of different frustration points for people or their neighbors to a home occupation that has perhaps been allowed to grow a little bit larger than what might be appropriate now, but because there were no standards and they've got a permit, there's really nothing we can do. But also, we require if you're an accountant or you work out of your home and you have a home office, for example, and you do taxes or whatever, we require that they submit an annual application fee and every year renew that permit. So there's a lot of work on our end. It feels like a hassle to them because they're not really doing anything. They're just working out of their house, which everybody was doing during COVID, but every year they're having to submit an application fee and go through the process. So, yeah, there's some frustration on sort of both sides of the fence with that, right?
Seems like we've got about half or 3/4 of the way into that.
Yeah, we ought to get that one over the finish
I
line.
would think we'd be able to.
You wanna put that on the next agenda, maybe, Mike, or
Sure.
just finish it
I
off?
can show you what you guys looked at last, which was sort of this idea of how to break it up and some examples of towns that have tiered system, so that they're kind of impact based. And we can decide what we like and how to revise it.
Yeah, one that I'd like to tackle is signs.
Yeah.
We've been talking about that so long.
Since as long as I've been on this
Yeah,
board.
me too.
The minimum floor area and the character, those seems like they'd be pretty quick to knock it off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Minimum floor area, that one's pretty easy to do. The character stuff should be pretty easy to do. It'll be all throughout the document.
Mhm.
And we had talked about, you know, if something was a really big change, waiting until we had the draft of the codified text, so that we were making changes in sort of the new document rather than working in the old document and then trying to figure out what sections. And I expect we'll have that in the next month or so.
All right.
But those are not difficult.
Sounds good.
The strategic development zone, I sort of feel like you might want to consider looking to see what the EDC does with the strategic plan, which they're about to get started with, because as part of that scope, they're going to evaluate, its consultant's going to evaluate 2 or 3 development programs that are not just sort of picked randomly out of the sky. So if they evaluate some potential developments and there's some consensus surrounding that, it might make sense if you do anything with the SDZ to sort of try to align that with whatever has been contemplated by that plan. It would be a little bit more refined than just leaving it wide open, which I think was some of the concern that people had with the SDZ version 1. And if there's been some viability demonstrated by the consultant to some of those programs, in theory, it's a little bit better than just sort of putting some uses down and seeing what shakes out. It means it's gonna be a while before you do anything with it, but
It'd give us some good guidance.
yeah.
Yeah, there was a pretty contentious, the SDC, but you know, when you look at it though, and you give it an honest look, you know, it did, the process worked because we,
Well,
you know,
it did what
it
it
was
was
still,
supposed
yeah.
to.
It wasn't like, you know, it was out of control and these things, you know, things were just gonna happen, you know, it's still had to go through the process.
But I think revisiting that a second time, if we have the results of the economic development study, it'll give us more basis.
Yeah.
And people may be easier for the general public to understand.
Yeah,
And it's just not us speaking, it'll be the consultants, the report also speaking.
It's a consultant been chosen?
Yes, yep. It's a consultant out of, I think it's Andover, Mass, Strategy 5. They're a strategic planning, but it's more about real estate and financial feasibility.
Did he have experience with towns like ours, or is it mostly towns?
He's worked all over the country, for both cities and towns, but also developments, and trying to either analyze a development to figure out if it's gonna work and whether or not it's gonna actually pencil out, but also trying to help towns understand the financial component to making a development, which could be a massive, you know, mill complex that's the heart of a town, or a downtown that's dying because it's lost office. You know, he's not an AICP planner like I am, but he's involved in the development and really looking at data, demographics, what the market is doing, what rents are, what interest rate, you know, like, so he would look at like project pro forma to determine if tax abatements are gonna be necessary, and if the town's evaluating whether to give a tax abatement, is the stuff that the developer is giving you legitimate, right? You know, and how to determine what equity might be in the project when it's done, and so he's more on the finance side, but strictly in the commercial real estate.
Does he kind of look at the appropriateness of a particular development in a particular place too?
Yeah, so one of the, so there's gonna be a lot of public outreach as part of the strategic plan, but it's gonna be more of a fact-finding operation versus let's figure out how we can put our thumb on the one thing that everybody in town wants, right? It's great if everybody wants an ice cream shop, but an ice cream shop isn't gonna help the grand list, and an ice cream shop, if it was gonna work here for the market, it probably wouldn't be here. So what he's really looking at is sort of more of a fundamental, I don't know what term he called it, but evaluating a development that is a little bit larger scale and trying to find the line between financial feasibility, zoning feasibility, and public consensus.
How does he like fit that into the POCD?
So he's going to, I would imagine, derive some of those programs that he's gonna evaluate, right? He's not going to evaluate some type of use that's prohibited by the zoning regs. So I think that'll give him that area. And he may find that what's in there isn't aligned with the market, and there may be text amendment that comes out of that. But this is, yeah, it's very much in line with that. So right now, he's in the process of reviewing the POCD, reviewing the affordable housing plan. He's reviewing, I think he's reviewing like previous town budget, trying to get all of that stuff together. Because the EDC is gonna have a kickoff with him next week. And then from there, figure out how to move that into working with other commissions.
Who's the current chair of EDC now?
So Matt Clark was the chair, and then he asked to step down when he was moved onto the Board of Selectmen, but trying to get some new members. So he's acting chair. He's got Bill Rankin, Sam Hills, and Cheryl Mitchell as well.
All right, well, that sounds interesting. Looking forward to see what they come up with.
And all PLCD is due in 2 years, 3 years?
It's been a while since we did one,
Yeah,
at least 7
got 2.
years ago, I
I
think.
think it was 2016.
Yeah.
So we got 2 years.
That's quite a process.
Yeah, it is. And
I think that guy we worked with, I think he was pretty good.
Yeah, it was.
Glenn,
Yeah,
I think he's about riding off into the sunset, picking things up here and there, but yeah, it will be interesting to see. There's a lot of components with the strategic plan that are very similar to what a POCD is.
So they should be somewhat harmonious, you know.
Yeah, yeah, and it's possible that the strategic plan could be somehow taken and expanded or built on as the amended POCD, depending on how comprehensive it is. Or perhaps that builds out the development section of the POCD.
I guess we need to look at reality too. What are the real potentials for things that happen here too? Like a lot of times with POCD, you'll have like all
Right.
kinds of
Aspirational.
aspirations that
touchy things.
that are
you know,
never gonna
something this
happen,
could-
yeah.
Yeah, well, I think everybody's looking at the POCD as an overall plan.
Yeah.
And it's not. What, you know, economic development's gonna come with is something that's more of a build-out
Yes.
plan, which has been lacking to this point. Well, because of the vagueness of what's in there.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that's really important to the EDC is if we talk to the public and we look at the market and we analyze the parcels that we have, and we look at the whole picture, and what the town is willing to support is miles away from what the market is likely to bring. And that might be okay, but we need to know that from their feeling is from a sort of a financial planning perspective, right? We don't want to look at economic development as the solution to a grand list problem if the only things we're gonna get have no support from the public. And so then we need to be able to sit down with the public and have a conversation about, this is what we're likely to see. How do we feel about that? Are there things we can do to make that more palatable, or is the answer just no? And there are some towns that are like that.
But one thing you can't want is expensive things and everything, gets shut down too. Because of those two, this just doesn't work. We obviously saw how people felt like, about a large distribution center. That was pretty clear. So
Right.
that'd be interesting to see some of the other ideas and so forth.
So I'll read you the high level scope areas. So work area 1 is preliminary research, so reviewing all plans, documents, data, historic context, etc. You can come to the town hall, you can look at some of the other regional planning initiatives and some of the stuff that's happening just in the area. Then he'll do a land use analysis, looking at spatial connections, neighborhood relationships, development and opportunity areas of existing preservation, historic cultural areas, infrastructure, existing and planned, and identifying development constraints, whether it be topographic, geographic, etc. Then it will be a market analysis. Will be conducted using a combination of top-down approach, assimilating demographics, macroeconomic data, and regional economic trends, and a bottom-up approach that places greater weight on locational characteristics, socioeconomic characteristics, recognition of planned projects and their potential impact, and orientation to economic catalysts and other factors affecting future development. And then it'll be public outreach, and then conceptual development programs, which is again where he's going to analyze some of those, looking at use, size, character, role in the town's overall economic development in both quantitative and qualitative terms, looking at estimates of gross building areas, square footage, footprints, access, parking, and synergy with town goals. Economic and fiscal impact analysis comes next. A funding and finance strategy for how you could actually make these projects happen if we agree that what has been analyzed is what the town wants, how to actually establish that roadmap, and then developing an implementation and action plan. So those are the work areas, and we'll culminate in a report, what will be the strategic plan. I'm happy to share the actual scope. I was reading quickly, but I can send it to you if you want to see it, read all those areas in more detail.
Whatever happened to the overflow parking that was going to be made for FedEx? Remember that?
Yeah, I haven't heard one thing since then.
That's interesting.
With large companies like that, I don't know if it's possible that, they're just way ahead of where they are with, real estate, and they've got the approval, they got the text change. They haven't done any of the design. And there was a fair amount of design there. It's a state road, so it's possible they're hung up with DOT, because there were some concerns there, remember, with the curve. So it's possible.
Yeah, just had everything in months on that.
Amazon's taking a big bite out of their business as well as UPS too, so maybe that's happening.
And I asked them that question.
UPS is laying off, like 12,000 people.
They're already leasing off-site storage for trailers, and they own this facility, so they don't have any plans to move away from it, because it's not a lease. It's, they've got what they have there. They also, because of some state health department requirements, they're required to make some pretty substantial upgrades to their wastewater storm, like all their treatment systems. The quality of the water and kind of what they have to do, and the levels and all these other things which are beyond me, those standards have been increased dramatically. So there's I think several $1 million that they're going to be putting into that system. The guys that did all during construction, septic, stormwater, wastewater, whatever, for Loves, as soon as they finish Loves, are right into trying to figure out how to address the new standards for the system at FedEx.
So is that Fuss and O'Neill design?
Yeah. Jason Hoffman is the guy who's really run it, and we met with them last summer. They have all kinds of plans for what they had to do with the health department, but it was gonna be a really expensive project for
So
them.
that's being mandated by the state?
Yeah, there's some change to the way that water is either tested or cleaned or based upon project size. I don't know all the details, but there was like a higher standard that either maybe the state or larger companies were held to and kind of got walked back. So now they are subject to that. And so they have to make a lot of upgrades to the treatment system to meet the testing requirements. I'm not sure.
All right, anything else?
I don't have anything else. At some point, I'll probably have an update for you on the gloves stuff. Don't really have any update per se yet. Nothing has been scheduled. I'll try to have nothing scheduled as of right now. I'll try to get an update for you on that as soon as I have something.
So as far as the lawsuit goes?
Yeah. Yeah, right now it's just a bunch of chaos, but we don't have anything scheduled on the calendar with the courts.
What's the lawsuit over again?
So we did a bunch of bond
Yeah,
releases.
I remember
We
that.
had the last one. Right around June, July, we had issues with trucks allegedly that could not get into the site, were parking alongside in the right of
Yeah,
way.
we remember that, yeah.
So they ripped up all the seed, all the soil establishment, and turned it to mud. We were concerned there were some issues with the curb, and then also at that time when we did the inspection, the paint that they painted Polster Road with is gone. They used a traditional, basically just a regular paint, if you will, and not an epoxy, and so it's already worn. So we asked them, we got the bond estimate from Joe Dillon, remember you guys looked at it, and basically said, you know, we've got this and this, we just wanna hold the last 10,000, I think it was, can you just send someone out there to seed it, throw down the topsoil where necessary, paint the lines, call it a day. And they refused. So they have sued us for that and have made all kinds of claims, including naming myself and Lori as treasurer, personally in the suit as, you know, perpetuating a practice where the town profits off of bond funds provided by commercial businesses. So there's like 12 counts of misconduct against me. I don't know how many against Lori. And they've claimed, you know, all of these things that we have refused to do, that I have the right to release the bond and I refuse, that I, you know, essentially am extorting them out of the funds. Even though what I told them was, we don't have the capacity to do this work because we have a public works crew of 3 people. So can you just go out there and do this and we'll release the funds. So why we're going to go through this whole rigmarole for a few $1,000s worth of work is something that none of us seem to understand.
Are they gonna spend more money on attorneys? Let their friend try to prove a point, I guess, but.
Yeah, I mean, we want them to do the work. We don't want the money. We don't have the labor, right? The other towns would just send out their guys, say, cost us X, Y, and Z, so we'll release the balance. We don't have that here. We don't have the equipment. We don't stripe any of our roads here. It's all contracted out. So I don't have that. I talked with Troy about it. So, you know, there's really not much we can do. And so they've made all kinds of claims, all kinds of stuff, and it's what it is. It's with Harris. So, you know, we've named Loves, we've named Fuss and O'Neill. We're all gonna be in this now. But we had $183,000 total. We released, you know, 150, 60, whatever it is. So I'm not sure why the complaint that the town has tried to profit off of the bond fund holds any weight when we still have the money. And we've released 95% of it, but we're in it now.
Sounds like fun.
Fun is one way to.
That being said, it's 8:15 PM, meeting adjourned.
To answer your question, I was wondering what the mineral